There's a kind of silence that destroys more than screams. She learned that 4 years ago, on the day she signed papers that erased her name from a lifetime built beside him. He is Min Jae-hyuk, 32 years old, head of the Baeko organization, the man all of Korea fears to mention, and her. She's nobody now, or she was. Because today, in this crystal ballroom where the powerful pretend at civility, 3 pairs of eyes identical to his observe the world with the same cutting coldness he carries. 3 small existences he swore would never exist. But the worst part isn't that he was cruelly wrong. The worst part is realizing she never needed him to create what he destroyed. And when their eyes finally meet across the crowd, the fear he sees in his own reflection doesn't come from her. It comes from the certainty that he's lost something he can never recover. Some decisions destroy you the moment you make them. Others wait 4 years to reveal their true cost. The Shilla Hotel Gala Ballroom gleamed with the characteristic opulence of events where Seoul concentrated its real power. Baccarat crystals hung from the ceiling in cascades of light, reflecting off marble imported from Italy. Men in Brioni tuxedos conversed in low tones, while women in haute couture gowns displayed jewelry that cost more than entire apartments in Gangnam. Min Jae-hyuk observed all of this with the disinterest of someone born to control, not to impress. At 32, he had commanded the Baeko organization for 8 years. 8 years during which he'd transformed his father's legacy from a territorial gang into a corporate empire that moved billions through legitimate and illegitimate channels across Asia. Banks, construction companies, import-export conglomerates, casinos in Macau, real estate in Singapore. The Korean media called him a business magnate. The police called him untouchable. His enemies simply called him death. Tonight's gala celebrated the merger between Baeko Group and Hanseong Industries, a union that would give Jae-hyuk control over 40% of Seoul's commercial real estate development. It was the kind of victory that required the performance of civility, champagne, speeches, handshakes with men who would slit his throat if they thought they could survive the consequences. He'd arrived alone, as always. His right-hand man, Kang Do-jin, hovered near the entrance with 6 other men in dark suits. Security masked as guests. Nobody here was truly safe, and everyone knew it. Jae-hyuk lifted his champagne glass, Dom Perignon 2008 naturally, and let his gaze drift across the ballroom with practiced boredom. That's when he saw her. The glass stopped halfway to his lips. Park Hwan. The name detonated in his mind like a grenade he'd thought safely buried 4 years ago. She stood near the panoramic windows overlooking the Han River, her back partially turned to him. The black gown she wore was elegant but understated. Dior probably, but not ostentatious. Her hair was swept into a low chignon that exposed the curve of her neck. The same neck he'd once... Jae-hyuk crushed that thought before it could fully form. His fingers tightened around the champagne flute until he heard the crystal begin to crack. He forced himself to loosen his grip before it shattered completely. It couldn't be her. Hwan had left Seoul 4 years ago. The divorce had been clean. Final. She'd signed the papers without a fight, taken nothing from him except what remained of her dignity, and disappeared so completely that even his investigators couldn't track her beyond Incheon Airport. He'd assumed she'd left Korea entirely, started over somewhere without his shadow suffocating every breath. But the woman by the windows moved with Hwan's particular grace, that fluid elegance she'd always possessed, even when she'd been nothing but a law student working 3 part-time jobs to pay tuition. She turned slightly, speaking to someone out of his line of sight. Jae-hyuk's world tilted on its axis. It was her, unmistakably. Those features he'd once traced with fingertips that still remembered the geography of her skin, the delicate bone structure that made her beautiful without effort, the eyes that had once looked at him with something dangerously close to love, before he'd killed it. His jaw clenched so hard his molars ground together. What the hell was she doing here? This gala was invitation only, restricted to Seoul's upper echelon of power and wealth. Hwan had connections to neither. She'd been a prosecutor when they'd married, brilliant, idealistic, and utterly unsuited to the reality of what loving him actually meant. Do-jin appeared at his elbow like a shadow summoned. "Sir, you look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," Jae-hyuk murmured, his voice carrying the lethal quiet that made experienced killers nervous. "Find out who invited Park Hwan. Now." Do-jin's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise the man ever permitted himself. "Park Hwan is here?" "Near the east windows. Black dress. Don't let her see you looking." Do-jin melted back into the crowd with the efficiency that had kept him alive in Jae-hyuk's service for 12 years. Jae-hyuk forced himself to remain still, to keep his expression neutral even as something violent and chaotic thrashed beneath his ribcage. Memories he'd successfully buried under layers of work and strategic brutality suddenly clawed their way back to the surface. Her face when he'd thrown the divorce papers at her. The way she'd flinched but not cried, not given him the satisfaction of tears. "Pregnant with you?" He'd sneered, contempt dripping from every syllable. "That will never happen." The quiet way she'd picked up the pen, signed her name, walked out of his life without once looking back. He'd convinced himself it was relief he'd felt. She'd been a liability, a soft ethical weakness in a world where weakness got you killed. Loving her had been the most dangerous thing he'd ever done, more dangerous than any gang war or police investigation. So he'd cut her out like a tumor. And now she was back, standing in his ballroom, at his event, looking like she belonged to a world that had never included him in the first place. Jae-hyuk drained his champagne in one swallow and set the empty glass on a passing server's tray with enough force to make the young man jump. That's when Hwan moved. She stepped aside, revealing what, or rather who, she'd been speaking to. 3 little girls, identical, perhaps 4 years old, dressed in matching white dresses with pale pink ribbons, their dark hair styled in the same soft waves. Triplets. Beautiful, delicate triplets who looked up at their mother with expressions of perfect adoration. Jae-hyuk's heart stopped beating. Then it restarted with a violence that made his chest ache. The girls had Hwan's elegance, her graceful movements, but their faces were his. The sharp line of the jaw, the particular slant of the eyes, the way the oldest one, he could tell she was oldest by the subtle authority in how she held herself, tilted her head with the exact same calculating angle Jae-hyuk used when assessing a threat. The champagne he'd just swallowed turned to acid in his stomach. No, it wasn't possible. He'd said those exact words to her 4 years ago. "Pregnant with me? That will never happen." He'd meant it. He'd been certain. They'd been careful. He'd always been careful because bringing a child into his world was a cruelty he refused to commit. But the evidence stood 15 meters away, living and breathing and identical to him. The middle child, slightly smaller, with wider eyes that held a dreamer's softness, suddenly looked directly at him. Her gaze locked onto his with an intensity that froze the blood in his veins. She saw him, recognized something, then she tugged on Hwan's dress. Everything that happened next occurred in slow motion. Hwan looked down at the child. The girl pointed. Hwan's gaze followed the direction of that small finger, and their eyes met across the crowded ballroom. 4 years collapsed into nothing. Jae-hyuk saw the exact moment Hwan recognized him. Her face drained of color, then flushed, then settled into an expression of such carefully controlled blankness that it was more damning than any emotion could have been. She said something to the children. Quick, urgent. The triplets immediately clustered closer to her, their small faces turning serious in a way that children that young shouldn't understand. Hwan placed a protective hand on the oldest girl's shoulder. Then she looked at Jae-hyuk again. This time, there was no shock, no fear, no residual love or longing or any of the things he might have expected. There was only ice, pure Arctic ice that made him feel like the stranger. She held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to deliver a message that needed no words. Stay away from us. Then she turned and began walking toward the exit, the 3 little girls following in perfect formation around her like a protective guard she'd trained them to be. Jae-hyuk's body moved before his brain caught up. He was already cutting through the crowd, ignoring the greetings and attempted conversations from people whose names and faces barely registered. His focus had narrowed to a laser point. Hwan's retreating figure and the 3 small lives that couldn't possibly exist, but did. Hwan, his voice cut through the ambient noise with the authority of someone who'd never had a command disobeyed. She didn't stop. She didn't even slow down. Park Hwan. This time, people in the immediate vicinity turned to stare. In Seoul's high society, public displays of anything were considered vulgar. Raising one's voice at a gala was practically scandalous. Jae-hyuk didn't give a damn. Hwan finally stopped. Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't turn around. The triplets looked up at her uncertainly, then back at the man pursuing them with expressions far too knowing for children their age. Jae-hyuk closed the distance in 4 long strides. "We need to talk," he said quietly, intensely. "Now." Hwan slowly turned to face him. Up close, he could see the changes 4 years had wrought. She was thinner, more angular. The softness he remembered had been replaced by something harder, more refined, like steel that had been through the forge. She was more beautiful than he remembered, and infinitely more distant. "No," she said simply. Her voice was calm, professional, the tone she'd once used cross-examining hostile witnesses. "We don't. Those children are mine." She emphasized the word with surgical precision. "Only mine. You made that very clear 4 years ago." The oldest triplet stepped forward, placing herself between Jae-hyuk and her mother with a bravery that punched him in the chest. "You're bothering our mommy," she said in a voice that, despite its childish pitch, carried unmistakable warning. "Please go away." Jae-hyuk stared down at the little girl. She stared back without flinching. She had his eyes. Exactly his eyes. Dark, intense, unflinching. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended. "Min Seo-yeon," the girl replied with perfect formality. "And you shouldn't talk to strangers." Min. She had his family name. The world tilted again. "That's enough, Seo-yeon," Hwan said gently, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. She looked at Jae-hyuk with an expression that could have carved stone. "You signed papers 4 years ago that terminated every right and obligation you had. That includes the right to this conversation. You were pregnant. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, an indictment, a confession all at once." "Was I?" Hwan's smile was razor sharp. "How strange. I distinctly remember you saying that would never happen. I must have misheard." "Don't play games with me, Hwan." "I'm not playing anything, Jae-hyuk." She said his name like it was a disease she'd overcome. "You made your choice. I respected it. You wanted nothing to do with a child that was apparently impossible. So I made sure you wouldn't have to deal with that impossibility. You hid my daughters from me. I protected my daughters from you." Her eyes flashed with the first real emotion he'd seen. Fury. White-hot and righteous. "There's a difference. One you'll never understand." The middle triplet, the one who'd pointed at him first, suddenly spoke up. "Mommy, is this the bad man from the stories?" Hwan's face softened instantly when she looked at the child. "No, sweetheart. He's nobody. Just someone Mommy used to know. Nobody." The word hit harder than any bullet Jae-hyuk had ever taken. "We're not finished," he said, his voice dropping to the dangerous register that preceded violence. "Yes," Hwan replied with devastating finality. "We are. We've been finished for 4 years. The only difference is now you know what you threw away." She gathered the triplets closer. "Come on, girls. Let's go home." "Hwan!" She walked away. Again. Just like she had 4 years ago. But this time, she took 3 pieces of him he hadn't known existed. Jae-hyuk stood frozen in the middle of Seoul's elite, watching the only woman he'd ever loved disappear with the children he'd sworn would never exist. And for the first time in 8 years of ruling Seoul's underworld, Min Jae-hyuk had absolutely no idea what to do next. The past doesn't stay buried. It waits for the perfect moment to detonate. Min Jae-hyuk didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse office in Gangnam, 32 floors above the city that never quite slept, staring at the dossier Kang Do-jin had compiled in less than 4 hours. Park Hwan, age 31, chief legal counsel for Hansong Industries. That last detail made his jaw clench. Hansong, the very company he'd just merged with. Which meant Hwan had been involved in the negotiations for months without him knowing. She'd been in meetings, reviewing contracts, probably in the same buildings he'd visited, and he'd never once suspected. She'd hidden in plain sight. Deliberately. The dossier included photographs, surveillance images his men had taken after the gala. Hwan leaving the hotel with the triplets, getting into a modest Hyundai Genesis, driving to a high-rise apartment in Seongsu-dong, an affluent but not ostentatious neighborhood known for young professionals and families. The apartment building wasn't cheap, but it wasn't the kind of luxury she could have afforded on a prosecutor's salary, which meant Hansung paid her very well indeed. There were school records. Min Seo-yeon, Min Ji-woo, Min Hae-rin, enrolled at Seoul International Academy, one of the city's most prestigious private schools. All 3 tested as gifted. Seo-yeon, the oldest by 7 minutes, according to birth certificates Do-jin had somehow acquired, showed particular aptitude in logic and mathematics. Ji-woo excelled in creative arts and languages. Hae-rin demonstrated advanced emotional intelligence and mediation skills. Jae-hyuk's daughters were brilliant. His daughters. The words still felt impossible in his mind. He'd spent 4 years building an empire, consolidating power, eliminating rivals. He'd survived 2 assassination attempts, a police investigation that had cost him $8 million in bribes to bury, and a territorial war with the Jade Serpent Syndicate that had left 17 men dead. And the entire time, Hwan had been raising his children alone. The thought made something violent twist in his chest, a sensation he didn't have a name for because he'd spent his entire adult life excising such feelings from his emotional repertoire. "You look like you're planning a war," Do-jin observed from the doorway. Jae-hyuk didn't look up from the photographs. 3 identical little girls smiled at the camera in what appeared to be a school picture. Seo-yeon's smile was controlled, knowing. Ji-woo's was dreamy, distant. Hae-rin's was warm, genuine. "I'm planning how to fix a mistake I didn't know I'd made," Jae-hyuk said quietly. "With respect, sir, those children aren't a mistake." "I didn't say they were." Jae-hyuk finally looked up, his expression harder than diamonds. The mistake was letting Hwan believe I didn't want them. Dojin shifted his weight, a tell that indicated discomfort. You did say that, quite explicitly, if I remember correctly, and I was there. The memory surfaced with painful clarity. 4 years and 2 months ago. Jae-hyuk's private office in the Baeko headquarters. Hwan standing across from his desk, her face pale but composed, one hand unconsciously resting on her still flat stomach. I'm pregnant, she'd said simply. And he'd looked at her like she'd detonated a bomb in his chest, which in a way she had. No, he'd said immediately. Absolutely not. Jae-hyuk, pregnant with me? That will never happen. The words had come out harsh, final, backed by 4 years of carefully maintained emotional distance. I told you from the beginning, no children, ever. My life doesn't allow for that kind of vulnerability. It's not about allowing, Hwan had replied, her voice shaking only slightly. It already happened. I'm 9 weeks along. Then terminate it. The silence that followed had been absolute. Hwan had looked at him like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Like every illusion she'd built about who he might become had shattered in that single moment. I see, she'd whispered. This isn't negotiable, Hwan. A child makes you a target. Makes them a target. In my world, that's a death sentence. I won't do that to an innocent life. How noble of you, she'd said with bitter irony. Protecting someone by ensuring they never exist.
안녕, 여러분. Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know I didn't tell everything yet. The complete version has 20 full audio episodes. No interruptions, no ads. Just the story, the emotions, and the moments I couldn't fit in here. If you scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening right now.
I'm protecting you, and myself, and the ghost of a future that can't happen. He'd pulled the divorce papers from his desk drawer, papers he'd had prepared months earlier but never had the courage to serve. Until that moment. Sign these. Leave Seoul. Start over somewhere I can't ruin you. You already ruined me, Hwan had replied. But she'd picked up the pen and signed her name with a steady hand that impressed him even as it destroyed him. Jae-hyuk slammed his fist on the desk, scattering the photographs. I thought I was protecting her, he said through clenched teeth. From the life, from the enemies, from me. Instead, you just hurt her. Dojin replied with the brutal honesty only a man who'd saved Jae-hyuk's life 3 times could get away with. And now she's protected herself better than you ever could have. That was the part that actually stung. Hwan hadn't just survived without him. She'd thrived. Chief legal counsel at a major corporation. Mother to 3 exceptional children. Living a life that looked complete without any space carved out for him in it. She'd moved on. While he'd spent 4 years telling himself he'd made the right choice, even as her absence had hollowed him out in ways he refused to acknowledge. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop investigating me. Stop investigating my daughters. Leave us alone, or I will file a restraining order and make it public. Ask yourself if the head of Baeko Group can afford that kind of scandal. H.W. Jae-hyuk almost smiled. Almost. Even now, even while threatening him, Hwan was protecting him. A restraining order would raise questions about his past, his personal life, cracks in the carefully constructed facade he presented to Seoul's business community. She could destroy his reputation with a single filing, but she was giving him an out instead. He typed a response. We need to talk. Not about us. About them. They deserve to know who I am. The reply came within seconds. They know exactly who you are. I told them the truth. You're the man who didn't want them. That's all they need to know. Jae-hyuk stared at the screen, rage and something painfully close to grief warring in his chest. I was wrong. 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Finally, congratulations on your epiphany. 4 years too late. Don't contact me again. She blocked his number. Jae-hyuk set the phone down with lethal calm. Dojin, sir, find out everything about Hwan's security, where the girls go to school, their routes, schedules, vulnerabilities. Are you planning to kidnap your own children? I'm planning to protect them, whether their mother likes it or not. Jae-hyuk stood walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city he controlled. Hwan thinks she can hide them from my world. But the moment anyone in Seoul's underworld discovers I have daughters, those girls become leverage, targets. Then maybe, Dojin suggested carefully, you should respect Hwan's wishes and stay away. That's the best protection you can offer. Jae-hyuk was quiet for a long moment. I thought that 4 years ago, he finally said. I was wrong then. I won't be wrong again, even if it means going to war with the mother of your children. Especially then. Jae-hyuk's reflection in the window showed a man who'd forgotten how to lose. Because Hwan doesn't understand what I do. Seoul's underworld doesn't care about her wishes or restraining orders. The moment they smell blood, they'll come. And I'll be there to make sure my daughters never know what it's like to be afraid. Dojin sighed. This is going to end badly. It already ended badly, Jae-hyuk replied. 4 years ago. Now I'm just dealing with the aftermath. He turned back to the photographs scattered across his desk. 3 little girls who shared his DNA, but not his name. Not his protection, not his presence. That was about to change. Whether Park Hae-won was ready or not, protection and possession look identical from a distance. The difference is only visible when you're already trapped. Hae-won discovered the security detail on Tuesday morning. She was walking Seo, Yeon, Jiwoo, and Hae-rin to their school bus stop, a daily ritual they all cherished despite the early hour, when she noticed the black Mercedes sedan parked half a block away. Same position as yesterday. And the day before. Different car, but the same model, the same tinted windows. The same subtle professional quality that screamed private security. Her blood turned to ice. Mommy? Hae-rin tugged on her hand. You stopped walking. Hae-won forced a smile for her most emotionally perceptive daughter. Just remembered something I forgot to tell you. Remember how we talked about strangers? All 3 girls nodded seriously. They'd had this conversation more times than any 4-year-old should need to. If anyone ever approaches you, anyone you don't know, what do? Run to a teacher, Seo-yeon recited immediately, or a police officer. Make lots of noise, Jiwoo added. Scream and yell. Don't go anywhere with them ever, Hae-rin finished. Even if they say mommy sent them. Perfect. Hae-won kissed each of their foreheads. You're my smart, careful girls. She walked them the rest of the way to the bus stop, hyper-aware of the sedan trailing them at a discreet distance. Professional, patient, relentless. Exactly like Jae-hyuk. After the school bus pulled away, taking with it the 3 most precious pieces of her heart, Hae-won walked directly toward the Mercedes. The driver's window rolled down as she approached. The man inside was in his late 30s, Korean, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. His expression was professionally neutral, but his eyes tracked her movements with the assessment of someone trained in violence. Mrs. Park, he said politely. I know exactly who you are, Hae-won cut him off coldly. And who sent you. Tell Min Jae-hyuk that if I see you or anyone like you within 100 meters of my daughters again, I'm filing that restraining order. Today. Mr. Min is concerned about the children's safety. Mr. Min, Hae-won said with acid precision, has no children. He made that explicitly clear 4 years ago. These surveillance games don't change that legal reality. The security agent shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, with respect, Mr. Min's world has enemies. If they discover his daughters exist, they won't. Because they're not his daughters in any way that matters. They're mine. I've kept them safe for 4 years without his help or his protection. She emphasized the last word like it was a curse. Tell your employer to stay away from my family. This is the only warning he gets. She turned and walked away before the man could respond, her spine straight and her hands shaking with barely contained rage. Jae-hyuk thought he could just insert himself back into their lives? Thought he could claim some paternal authority after years of absence? Not a chance. But the security detail didn't disappear. Over the next week, Hae-won identified 3 separate teams rotating shifts. One outside her apartment building, one near the girls' school, one that followed her to work at Hansung Industries. She filed a formal complaint with the police. The officers took her statement politely and promised to look into it, but nothing changed. Jae-hyuk's influence ran deep in Seoul, deeper than civilian law enforcement wanted to acknowledge. On Friday, she walked into her office at Hanseong to find Jae-hyuk sitting in her chair. Her heart slammed against her ribs even as her expression froze into professional blankness. Get out of my office, she said calmly. Jae-hyuk stood with the fluid grace of a predator rising from rest. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. His dark eyes tracked her with an intensity that once would have made her knees weak. Now it just made her angry. We need to talk, Hae-won. No, we need you to respect boundaries like a functional adult. She crossed her arms. How did you even get past security? I own 40% of this company as of last week. Security doesn't stop me from going anywhere I want. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Hwan took a slow breath. You merged with Hansung to get to me? I merged with Hansung because it was strategically sound. Jae-hyuk's expression gave nothing away. Your presence here was an unexpected complication. Funny. I'd describe you exactly the same way. Something that might have been pain flickered across his features before vanishing. I know you're angry. Angry? Hae-won laughed without humor. Anger is what I feel when someone cuts me off in traffic. What I feel about you requires entirely new vocabulary. I made a mistake. You made several. The mistake I'm currently focused on is the surveillance team you've assigned to stalk my children. I'm protecting them. You're terrifying them. Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. Hwan has started having nightmares about strange men following her. Jiwoo asks me every morning if the shadow cars will be there. Hyerin cries before school because she thinks someone's going to take her away from me. Jaehyuk went very still. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You don't know them. You're a stranger who shares their DNA and nothing else. Hwan moved to her desk, putting furniture between them like a barrier. Call off your men, today, or I escalate this in ways that will cost you more than money. There are people who would hurt them to get to me. Then stay away from them. The words came out raw, desperate. Don't you see? You're the danger, Jaehyuk. You and your world and everyone in it. The only reason my daughters are safe is because nobody knows they exist. But you're about to change that with your security details and your presence and your... She cut herself off before saying something she'd regret. I can't stay away, Jaehyuk said quietly. Not anymore. You don't get to decide that. I'm their father. No. Hwan's voice turned to ice. You're a sperm donor who rejected them before they were born. Being a father requires presence, love, sacrifice, things you've proven yourself fundamentally incapable of. The words hit their mark. She saw Jaehyuk flinch, barely, just a microscopic tightening around his eyes. But she saw it. I was trying to protect you, he said. By destroying me? Interesting strategy. By giving you a chance at a life that didn't include this. He gestured vaguely at himself. Loving me was the most dangerous thing you'd ever done. I couldn't compound that by bringing children into it. So you made the decision unilaterally, without consulting me, without even considering that maybe, just maybe, I was capable of assessing risk for myself. You would have chosen to keep them. Yes. Hwan's eyes blazed. I would have. Because unlike you, I understand that love isn't a weakness to be eliminated. It's the only thing worth fighting for. Jaehyuk was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge she'd never heard before, something almost like vulnerability. I want to know them. Absolutely not. Hwan, they don't need you confusing them. They have a stable, happy life. A mother who loves them unconditionally. Friends, school, security that doesn't come from armed men in black sedans. She met his eyes without flinching. You can't just walk into that and disrupt everything because you've suddenly decided fatherhood might be interesting. This isn't about interest. It's about responsibility. Then take responsibility by leaving us alone. I can't. The admission seemed to cost him. I've tried. For a week, I've tried to convince myself you're right, that the best thing I can do is disappear. But every time I close my eyes, I see Seoyeon stepping in front of you at the gala, protecting you from me. She's 4 years old and already braver than half my men, because I taught her to be brave. No, because she's mine. Jaehyuk took a step closer. She has my eyes, Hwan, my stubbornness, my instinct to protect what matters. And Jiwoo, she looks at the world like she's seeing art in everything, like her mother used to, before I ruined that. And Hyerin reads people the way I do, sees through pretense to truth. Stop, Hwan's voice cracked. Stop talking about them like you know them. I want to know them. That's what I'm asking for. You don't ask, Jaehyuk. You take. You control. You manipulate. That's who you are. She shook her head. And I will not let you do that to my daughters. Our daughters. No, mine. Legally, morally, and in every way that actually counts. Hwan pulled a folder from her desk drawer and threw it at him. Papers scattered across the floor between them. Jaehyuk looked down. Birth certificates. All 3 listing Park Hwan as the mother and unknown in the father's slot. You removed me completely, he said slowly. I protected them from a legal claim you swore you'd never make. I did what any good mother would do. I ensured their security didn't depend on the whims of a man who'd already proven himself unreliable. The barb landed. Jaehyuk's jaw clenched. Change it, he said. Add my name. Why would I do that? Because it's the truth. The truth, Hwan replied with devastating calm, is that you terminated your parental rights 4 years ago. The truth is you told me to eliminate the problem. The truth is you called the children I was carrying, your children, a death sentence you refused to inflict. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But being wrong doesn't entitle you to undo the consequences. She began gathering the scattered papers, her movements precise and controlled. You made your choice, Jaehyuk. I'm making mine. And my choice is to protect my daughters from any more instability. You think I'm unstable? I think you're dangerous. There's a difference. Jaehyuk moved fast, not threateningly, but with the controlled intensity that had once made her pulse race for entirely different reasons. He stopped just short of her desk, his hands braced on the polished surface. I will be part of their lives, Hwan. With your cooperation or without it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Then let me make one too. Hwan leaned forward until they were nearly eye to eye. You come near my daughters without my explicit permission, I will bury you. Not with violence. I know you're better at that than I'll ever be. But with law, with publicity, with every connection I've built in the legal community over the past 4 years. You'd risk your reputation? For them? I'd risk everything, including you learning just how much I've changed since you threw me away. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. I'm not the soft prosecutor you married. Soul made me harder. You made me harder. And the woman I am now will destroy you if you threaten what I've built. They stared at each other across the desk. Two people who'd once known every secret of each other's hearts. Now strangers armed with intimate knowledge of precisely where to strike. Finally, Jae-hyuk stepped back. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, Hwan replied. It is. It's been over for 4 years. You're just realizing it now. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. They have my eyes, he said without turning around. My father's eyes. He died when I was 7, murdered by men who wanted what he'd built. And every day I look in the mirror, I see him looking back, reminding me of what weakness costs in this world. Jae-hyuk, now I have 3 daughters who look at the world with those same eyes. And you expect me to just walk away, pretend I don't see him in them, see myself, see the only pure thing I've ever helped create? The raw honesty in his voice cracked something in Hwan's carefully constructed armor. I expect you, she said softly, to love them enough to keep them safe, even if that means keeping them safe from you. Jae-hyuk was silent for a heartbeat. Then he left without another word. Hwan waited until his footsteps faded down the hallway. Then she sank into her chair, buried her face in her hands, and allowed herself exactly 2 minutes to shake. Because Min Jae-hyuk was many things. Ruthless, dangerous, brilliant. But he was also a man who never surrendered. And she'd just declared war on him using their daughters as the battlefield. The moral fracture wasn't that he wanted to know them. It was that part of her, a part she'd tried to kill 4 years ago, wanted him to. Children see what adults try to hide. They just don't have the vocabulary to name it yet. Min So-yeon knew something was wrong with Mommy. She was only 4 years old, but she'd learned early that adults lied with their smiles. Mommy had been smiling a lot this week. Too much. The kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Seo-yeon, her teacher Miss Kim called during free play. Your uncle is here to pick you up early. Seo-yeon looked up from the block she was building with Ji-woo and Haerin. We don't have an uncle. Miss Kim's smile faltered. He said he's family. He's waiting in the office with the principal. Every alarm Mommy had carefully installed in Seo-yeon's mind started screaming. We need to call Mommy first, Seo-yeon said firmly, standing up and pulling her sisters close. That's the rule. Always call Mommy. Of course, sweetheart, I'll do that right now. But when Miss Kim stepped away to make the call, Seo-yeon noticed the man standing outside the classroom window. Tall, black suit. The same kind of suit the men in the shadow cars wore. He was watching them. Seo-yeon grabbed Ji-woo's hand. We need to hide. Now. Why? Haerin whispered, her eyes going wide. Because Mommy said if strange men ever come for us, we run. Seo-yeon pulled her sisters toward the reading corner where Miss Kim kept emergency supplies. And we don't stop running until we find Mommy. 3 minutes later, Kang Do-jin stood in Seoul International Academy's principal office, watching Park Hae-won arrive like a force of nature. She didn't knock. She slammed the door open hard enough to make the principal jump. Where are my daughters? Her voice was lethal calm. Mrs. Park, please. There's been a misunderstanding, the principal stammered. This gentleman presented credentials saying he was authorized. He's not. Hae-won's eyes locked onto Do-jin with killing intent. He's a criminal who works for my ex-husband. And if you've let him anywhere near my children, I'm shutting this school down with lawsuits that will bankrupt you personally. Do-jin raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. The children are safe. They're with their teacher. I don't care what you came to do. Hae-won pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. You have 30 seconds to leave before I press send. Mr. Min just wanted to ensure 20 seconds. Do-jin recognized defeat when he saw it. He left. But as he walked to his car, he sent a text to Jae-hyuk. She's not going to cooperate. And the children are smart. Too smart. They reacted to my presence like trained operatives. Whatever Park Hae-won has taught them about strangers. It's working. The response came immediately. Good. At least she's protecting them properly. Pull all surveillance from the school. I'll find another way. Do-jin stared at the message. In 12 years of service, he'd never seen Jae-hyuk retreat from anything. This woman and these children had changed him in ways that terrified Do-jin more than any gang war ever had. Desperation makes men honest, and honesty from dangerous men is the most terrifying thing of all. Hwan found the envelope on her apartment door at midnight. She'd just finished putting the girls to bed after the school incident, a process that had taken 3 stories, 2 glasses of water, and 45 minutes of reassurance that no strange men couldn't take them away from mommy, ever. The envelope was unmarked, expensive paper, no postage, hand-delivered. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed 3 men, Korean, late 20s, covered in tattoos that marked them as Jade Serpent Syndicate, Jae-hyuk's most violent rivals. They were standing outside Seoul International Academy watching the playground. The timestamp read yesterday, 2:47 p.m., exactly when the girls would have been at recess. The note was in Jae-hyuk's handwriting, elegant, precise. You think I'm the danger, but I'm the only thing standing between them and this. The Jade Serpents know I have daughters now. Someone talked. Someone always talks. Your secrecy bought you 4 years. That time is over. You can hate me. You can fight me, but you cannot keep them safe alone anymore. My men will maintain a perimeter whether you approve or not, because if anything happens to them, I will burn Seoul to the ground. And you know I'm not speaking metaphorically. We need to talk, truly talk, for their sake. JHPS. I've enclosed information on the Jade Serpent members currently surveilling your building. You're welcome to file police reports. They'll be dead by morning anyway. Hwan read the note 3 times. Then she walked to her bedroom, locked the door, and called the one person she'd sworn never to contact again. He answered on the first ring. Hwan. Just her name. But the way he said it, rough with relief and something darker, made her chest tight. The Jade Serpents, she said without preamble. How long have they known? 5 days since the gala. Someone from Hansong Industries leaked photos to them. I'm still identifying who. And you didn't tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have accused me of manufacturing a threat to manipulate you? The accuracy of that assessment made her jaw clench. What do they want? She asked. Leverage. They can't touch me directly. I'm too well protected. But 3 4-year-old girls? His voice went cold in a way that promised violence. That's a vulnerability they can exploit. So your presence in their lives makes them targets. Thank you for proving my point. My absence won't change what they already know. The snap in his voice was startling. Jae-hyuk never lost control. They've seen the photographs. They know the girls exist. The only question now is whether they're protected by the most feared organization in Seoul, or by a single mother with good intentions and zero capacity for the kind of warfare that's coming. Hwan closed her eyes. I hate you. I know. I hate that you're right. I know that too. A pause. Let me help. Help implies partnership. This would be you taking over. No. This would be me providing what you can't. Armed protection, intelligence networks, and the reputation that makes rational people reconsider attacking what's mine. They're not yours. They're mine to protect. Whether you claim me as their father or not, my DNA is in their blood. That makes them targets. I'm trying to also make them untouchable. Hwan wanted to argue, wanted to find a hole in his logic, but she kept seeing that photograph, 3 predators watching her daughters play. What are you proposing? She asked carefully. Supervised visitation. 1 hour. This weekend. Neutral location. You present the entire time. That's reasonable. I can be reasonable when properly motivated. And the security detail? Non-negotiable. But I'll make them invisible. The girls won't know they're being protected. Jae-hyuk. This is the compromise, Hwan. Take it or I implement security protocols without your permission. Your choice. She hated that he was right, hated it viscerally. But she hated the idea of her daughters being vulnerable even more. 1 hour, she agreed. Saturday, 2 p.m., Olympic Park, public space. Agreed. And Jae-hyuk? Her voice turned to steel. If you hurt them, emotionally, psychologically, in any way, I will find a way to hurt you back, legal or otherwise. Understood. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. Thank you. She hung up before she could say something she'd regret. Like that part of her, the part that still remembered loving him, was relieved he wanted to try. Some meetings change nothing. Others change everything. You don't know which until it's too late to choose differently. Saturday arrived with brutal clarity. Jae-hyuk stood near the Olympic Park lake at 1:55 p.m., wearing jeans and a simple black sweater, the most casual clothing he'd worn in years. Do-jin had almost laughed when he'd seen the outfit. You look like a person, Do-jin had observed. I'm trying to look like a father, Jae-hyuk had replied. I'm not sure I know the difference.
If you made it to the end, you already understand this isn't just another story. What you watched here is only a fragment. The full experience lives in 20 complete audio episodes, carefully told, with every detail, every emotion, every turning point. There are no ads, no interruptions, and nothing was removed like it is on YouTube. You can listen anytime on your phone with total privacy, inside the members-only area. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or tap the link in the pinned comment to unlock the full story and continue listening immediately.
Now, watching Hwan approach with 3 small figures holding her hands, Jae-hyuk felt something he rarely experienced. Genuine fear. Not of violence or death, those were familiar. Fear of inadequacy, of saying the wrong thing, of seeing recognition in his daughter's eyes and having them reject him anyway. Seo-yeon spotted him first. She stopped walking, forcing her mother and sisters to stop too. "That's him," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes," Hwan replied quietly. "That's him. The man from the party," Jiwoo added, her dreamy eyes suddenly sharp. "The one who made mommy cry after." Jae-hyuk's heart cracked. He'd made Hwan cry. Of course he had. Haerin, the emotional one, stepped slightly in front of her sisters. "Are you going to make mommy cry again?" The question was so direct, so innocent, so devastating that Jae-hyuk almost forgot how to breathe. He knelt down, bringing himself to their eye level. Something his security team would have a heart attack about if they knew. Kneeling made you vulnerable, exposed. But these were his daughters. Vulnerability seemed appropriate. "I've made your mother cry before," he said honestly, "and I hate that I did. I'm going to try very hard not to do it again." "Trying isn't promising," Seo-yeon pointed out with ruthless logic. "You're right. I promise to try my hardest. Is that better?" "Marginally." Seo-yeon studied him with eyes that were absolutely his own. "Why do you want to meet us?" Jae-hyuk glanced at Hwan. She gave him a look that clearly said, "You wanted this. Handle it." He looked back at his daughters. "Because I made a mistake," he said simply, "a big one. And I'm trying to understand what I lost." "You lost us before we even existed," Jiwoo said with the bluntness of childhood. "Mommy told us." "She's right." "So why should we care that you changed your mind?" Haerin asked. "You didn't care about us first." These 4-year-olds were dismantling him more efficiently than any hostile interrogation ever had. "You shouldn't care," Jae-hyuk admitted. "I haven't earned that, but I'd like the chance to try, if you'll let me." The triplets looked at each other in that eerie way siblings sometimes did, communicating without words. Finally, Seo-yeon spoke. "1 hour, like Mommy said. Then we decide if you get another hour." "That's fair. And you have to answer questions truthfully," Jiwoo added. "Agreed. And if you're mean to Mommy, we leave immediately," Haerin finished. "Understood." The girls looked at their mother. Hwan nodded slowly. And just like that, Jae-hyuk was given permission to enter the lives he'd rejected. They walked around the lake. Jae-hyuk learned that Seo-yeon wanted to be a lawyer like Mommy, that Jiwoo painted watercolors of dreams she had at night, that Haerin could tell when people were lying by watching their hands. He learned they were brilliant and kind and brave. He learned they were everything he'd been too afraid to hope for. But as the hour ended and Hwan prepared to take them home, Seo-yeon suddenly grabbed Jae-hyuk's hand. "There's a man watching us," she whispered. "Behind the trees. He has a camera." Jae-hyuk's blood turned to ice. He turned slowly, caught a flash of movement. A telephoto lens, not his security. He knew every one of his men's positions. This was someone else, someone documenting that Min Jae-hyuk had daughters. "Get them to the car," he said quietly to Hwan. "Now." "Jae-hyuk, now!" Hwan saw his expression and didn't argue. She gathered the girls and moved. Jae-hyuk pulled out his phone and sent a single text to Dojin, photographer. "North trees, alive." 2 minutes later, Dojin dragged a struggling man from the forest. Jae-hyuk recognized the tattoo on his neck immediately. Jade Serpent. The war he'd been preparing for had just officially begun, and his daughters were already caught in the crossfire. The Jade Serpent Syndicate has proof, photographic evidence that Min Jae-hyuk, Seoul's most feared man, has 3 tiny weaknesses. 3 daughters who share his eyes but not his protection. 3 targets his enemies will use to destroy him. Hwan fought to keep them hidden. Jae-hyuk fought to know them, but now they'll both have to fight to keep them alive. Because in Seoul's underworld, family isn't a blessing. It's a death sentence waiting to be executed. If this video hits 3K views on the day it's posted, plus 20 comments, I'll release episode 02 today. Comment below. Team Jae-hyuk. He deserves a chance to protect his family. Team Hwan. She should take the girls and disappear. Your comments determine what happens next. Will they fight together or tear each other apart while their enemies close in? The clock is ticking. 3K views, 20 comments. Episode 02 drops today.